live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is the Notre Dame fan. Well, I'm not going to say a happy Notre Dame fan, but a Notre Dame man himself, Joe DeLeone. Joseph?
I'm not in a good mood. You highlighted it perfectly. I'm not in a good mood in terms of talking about my favorite team. It is becoming increasingly harder to be optimistic. And I know that we're going to get to all of it, but you're absolutely right. Not in the best of moods right now, Blake. Not in the best of moods.
Well, listen, people that follow me or AYS or the other show that we do, they know this hat. They know what it symbolizes. They know what it means. It means that LSU is, we're back. And you know what it means for Notre Dame. You have issues. Now, You know that I like to joke around. However, I do like to be serious. There is going to be a serious note that we have to discuss here tonight. One about Marcus Freeman, what I think that they're doing to him, that I think is absolutely incredulous. I think it's absolutely ludicrous what they're doing to him. Mm-hmm. We will touch on that. But I think the biggest thing, and I think that the door is being closed on this specific topic, why Brian Kelly ultimately left. And I think that we and you are going to have a discussion on it. You'll probably disagree. But when you want to be a serious program, Joe, you got to do specific things. $3 million to Notre Dame is a drop in the bucket.
Look, we're going to get into it, Blake, and I think we're really, really going to get into this. But
me and you are probably going to yell. I probably have to cancel my other show because you're yelling at you.
Look, again, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves before we get into the opening read, but it's a little bit more complex than just the $3 million for Andy Ludwig's buyout, which prevented him from being the next offensive coordinator. It's a little bit more than just them promoting their current tight ends coach to be the offensive coordinator.
Is that official?
It's not official, but I'm going to keep it as simple as this because I don't want to go any further. There are serious, and it seems to be the case, even without any information, I think anyone is capable of seeing and understanding that there is clear administrative issues going on at Notre Dame, and there are people stepping in and making decisions that frankly should not be anymore. And again, we're going to get into all of it. The frustration is mounting, and I think a lot of Notre Dame fans are upset. I haven't found a single one that has been looking at this positively, but there is a lot to talk about here, and it's kind of come to full head. There is no optimistic outlook currently for what's going on for Notre Dame.
Sources told me a couple of hours ago, and I told you this a long time ago, but you didn't believe me. When Brian Kelly got on the plane in South Bend to head to Baton Rouge, do you know what song was being played?
No.
There goes my hero. Watch him as he goes.
Is this a bad bit or is this serious?
It's not a bad bit. It's not a bad bit. You know what was being said. Clip it. People that love my singing will know it's true. All right. We do got a lot to get into. So Gerad Parker, by the way, was a teammate and GA of a really good buddy of mine. We call him Dickie Lyons at Kentucky.
Okay.
I got some pretty interesting info on Gerad Parker as a human being that I think is really interesting.
Can I ask, what does he know why his name isn't spelled normally? Why is it spelled with a G? I don't. That's my first red flag there. It's Gerad.
Family name.
I don't. Whatever, needs to be spelled correctly. We're
Well,
off to a tough start.
It doesn't matter. Look, let me just tell you something. Notre Dame fans keep saying that they're blue bloods. Blue blood, being a blue blood don't mean shit when that ball gets kicked off. And neither will the spelling of his first name. Okay?
Well, I'm just saying it's a red flag. It's a little weird. When you got somebody who spells their name differently, it's like, okay, what's he hiding?
We'll flip the script, though, Joe. Todd Monken leaves
to
the Ravens. We do not talk the NFL here. But what an absolute extension of the olive branch to Lamar Jackson. So the sources came out today that Lamar Jackson was highly involved in asking for Todd Monken, which I absolutely yes. So apparently they asked him and like, look, we will not hire Todd Monken if you do not approve. And apparently Lamar Jackson, as a good show of faith, look, the Ravens have been a very good organization. They've been run very well. So I definitely can see that. I don't think that that's fluff. But Mike Bobo, who has been an OC at Georgia before, takes the reins. A lot of people don't like that, but when you have talent, it doesn't really matter. We'll talk about why that is true. But, Joe, let's do this. Let's talk about our good friends over at BetOnline, betonline.ag. But stop right now. Joe, we are gaining subscribers on YouTube.
Yes.
I am going to listen, I'm just going to give somebody $200 until we get 1,000 subscribers. I am just going to continue to run the promo until we do it. We're getting so much closer to 400. 1,000 will be here before you know it. So go subscribe to the Ruffino and Joe Show where you're watching the show at live.
Also, tell your friends, tell your family. Yes. Like if
Joe,
join the community.
I told people, listen, Joe, send it in a mass text. Like if you, like my co-host, if you get 45 people to sub, I'll give you the $200. Okay. We need to get to this 1,000 very quickly. So go subscribe to AYS Sports and the Ruffino and Joe Show. Stop what you're doing as well. Hit the like and share. So many of you listening to us live on Facebook. Joe Show's killing it live on Facebook as always. Do us a favor. Hit the like and share. Share those SEC groups. Share to your social media pages. And we just told you about YouTube as well. Let's talk about our good friends over at BetOnline. I'll give you the floor coming out. You better be ready. Coming in hot like a Chinese air balloon. See you in 50 seconds. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. I tricked you. So, you remember when, we come out of the break, last episode, you said, oh, you always play that stupid little Sam Ehlinger thing.
No,
and
I didn't. I applauded it. I said that it was one of my favorite drops on the show.
Okay.
We're back.
It gets me juiced up.
So we do got to get into a lot here. I will give you the floor because I think I'll be a little long-winded. I think that you will be too on this Notre Dame stuff. So just to catch up everybody up to speed of what's going on. Andy Ludwig is the offensive coordinator at Utah. Runs a lot of the same pro-style systems under center. Runs just a lot of the same things that Notre Dame has been accustomed running under Brian Kelly and then under the first year with Marcus Freeman. So we all know that the Andy Ludwig situation, they didn't want to pay the $2.8 million buyout and then possibly pay him another $500,000 to $600,000 to $700,000 per year. So they punted on that. I did hear something. I don't know if you can confirm this. I was told that the administration at Notre Dame messed up with the contracts, meaning they got his old contract from the buyout. So originally they thought that his buyout was $800,000, but when they got to it, it was actually 2.8 because he had signed an extension. So once they found out there was 2.8, they punted it down the road and like, look, we're not going to do that. So now tight ends coach Gerad Parker. I always want to say Gerard because it starts with a G.
Right. The way it's spelled, I kept thinking it was Gerard. And when I did my notes, I typed in Gerard. Again, the name is I'm mad at other things, but the name is not helping.
Right. It's not helping. But Gerad Parker has had some time in the SEC, played at Kentucky, was a grad assistant at Kentucky, was the interim head coach at Purdue, was the offensive coordinator at West Virginia. Joe, give you the floor on all this. It's getting pretty bad up there in South Bend.
basically, from my understanding of the situation, you talked about there at the contract, what has been public information is that the University of Notre Dame, the administration, decided that they did not want to pay the buyout for Andy Ludwig, who we spent a lot of time on the last show right before the news broke saying that Andy Ludwig was a great candidate to be the next offensive coordinator.
Right.
Maybe not the biggest name on the market, but a very underrated one who has produced multiple very productive offenses at a Power 5 school. And we mentioned how they need to go out, they need to spend the money, they need to bring in somebody that is an outside face that has a proven track record. And instead, they choose not to pay the buyout. Separate from whatever information is out there, we can all agree that Notre Dame has the money to pay that. I think a lot of programs, a lot of Power 5 programs, even lower level Power 5 programs have that kind of money to spend to get an offensive coordinator and pay a buyout. It's
Right.
not like we're talking $10 million. This is $2 million and then whatever his contract is going to be. That is a clear indication in my eyes that there is clear meddling by the athletic administration and the school administration to push out Andy Ludwig as the offensive coordinator. It feels as though the athletic administration is trying way too damn hard to put their control in the decision-making of everything. And you talked about, this is why Brian Kelly left. Brian Kelly got sick of it. He was there long enough. He produced some very good Notre Dame seasons where they played in the college football playoff. But when he wanted what he wanted, he was always turned away and maybe not have been given the full story. And we're starting to see it kind of come to full fruition now. We'll get to Gerad Parker. I'm sure that we will. But my main takeaway from this is I don't know how Marcus Freeman is going to succeed if he is getting tampered with this much by the athletic administration. They need to stop and step out of the way and let the guy give him everything that he needs. He is a talented young coach. And if he is going to succeed and things are going to work out, he needs to be given the resources. If not, last season is going to be repeated and they're going to be a 4-loss team under Marcus Freeman's entire tenure leading this program until he gets hired away by another team. They will not get back to their history of success if that is not figured out and if the athletic administration does not step out of the way.
I think you said it perfectly. I thought that we would argue here. I think that there was a misconception when Brian Kelly left South Bend and went to Baton Rouge. Now, look, everybody knows I'm an LSU Tiger. I love LSU, but at the same time, and you wear the hat for jokes, and I get it. But Joe, LSU's not turning away Brian Kelly for anything that he wants. They gave him $90 million guaranteed. NIL, they're giving him money. They're producing. Their collective is, from things that I hear, they launched their collective 2 weeks ago. Alabama officially launched their collective the next day. I hear a lot of Notre Dame media chirping, and this is not like I'm not joking here like I normally play around and stuff like that. They're like, I'm with you if you don't want to get into the game of paying players. Well, okay, other teams that are going to win national titles are doing that, though. You lost Peyton Bowen. You lost, what's the defensive end?
Keelan Keeley.
Keelan Keeley to Alabama, probably for those reasons. But that's not the concern. If you don't want to do the NIL, you want to be an 8, 9, 10-win team every year, good for you. Good for you. If that's what you want to be your ultimate pinnacle, then good for you. But, Joe, the biggest problem that I have is I constantly hear, and this is from everybody outside that's not Notre Dame fans, oh, Notre Dame this, oh, Notre Dame that. Well, at some point, you got to shit or get off the pot. Okay, because until you want to actually do something, I'm talking about actually go out there and spend the money, you're not going to be worth a damn. And let me just tell you this. It's not just Notre Dame that has these issues. You know who else had this issue before last season? USC didn't want to do it. They finally spend the money. They go get Lincoln Riley. They're dumping money into the football program. Why? Because now with these TV deals, you're getting paid a crap load of money. Mm-hmm. We literally just saw ESPN, let's call it what it is, ESPN pay $100 million to go get Texas and Oklahoma. Don't tell me that you can't do things in college football. And don't tell me that the Catholics don't have $3 million worth of buyout money. Now, here's the bigger issue. And it ultimately is the biggest issue. if you're not going to back Marcus Freeman, then fire him. If you're not going to back him on his candidate, then fire him. You know why, Joe? Because you're not giving him a chance to succeed at all.
Blake, here's how I see it, though. I don't disagree with that, but I almost feel as though Jack Swarbrick, who is the athletic director, is content with the results from last year and almost doesn't care if they'd get past 4 losses.
Then fire him.
But that's my point. They need to fire Jack Swarbrick, and I don't know who needs to make that decision. If that's the president of the university, he has allowed the athletic department and these programs to get, kind of right up to the point where they're competitive, but not national championship winning programs. Notre Dame has a history of, in all their sports, of being very, very good in basketball, especially in football, in a number of different sports.
I mean, hell, Notre Dame took down the best team in college baseball last year, and they didn't even fight for Link Gerad. I know that he's going home, but they don't even fight for him.
Because they don't want to. They're content with it just being good enough. They're too content with this being a product for an academic institution that they can be happy to say, like, hey, the football team's pretty good this year. That's what it feels like. It does not feel like the same history of Notre Dame that I didn't even get to witness when I was growing up, because I have been living through mediocrity for the entire 24 years, almost 25 years of my freaking life. And I'm sick of it. I am absolutely sick of it. Hearing my dad, who's an alum, yell about it, I understand, because they had pride in them being competitive and good in national championship contending in all of their sports. And instead, it's just a fun little thing to talk about with your finance buddies when you go to the University of Notre Dame. That's what it's become, and it's bullshit.
It is. And I don't know if you got to fire the AD. I don't know.
It might be coming from the top. It might be coming from the top that's what we've gotten to at this point.
Do you think it's coming from Father whatever his name is?
I don't know who the president is right now, but I know that when Father Hesburgh was there.
It's really difficult for me to think. See, here's what the difficult thing for me to believe or why I don't think it's money at all, and they're trying to say it is money, and it has nothing to do with money. Let me tell you why. We know for a fact, okay, because LSU has to produce a profit and loss margin. They have to put in that profit and loss margin for LSU football the buyout that Brian Kelly had. Newsflash. Brian Kelly was making $7.5 million a year last year without the incentives. That's just a base. Marcus Freeman's making $5 million. It's like you're paying Brian Kelly all over again. I think that there's an issue, or people have issues with Marcus Freeman that are boosters that maybe did call the AD and say, listen, we're not paying this. We need to see more results. And that is going to be the ultimate issue with Marcus Freeman. I don't – and look, this isn't a Marcus Freeman alone issue. This happens with college coaches all around. Les Miles had it at the end of his tenure, if we're going to stay with the LSU topic. You know who else had it? Steve Spurrier had it at the end of his tenure at South Carolina. Urban Meyer had it at the last years and parts of his career at Florida. This is not just a Marcus Freeman issue. But you know what's interesting, though? You can say that you're a blue blood, and we talk about blue bloods all the time. Can I tell you the two words that bother me in college football more than anything?
Is it blue blood?
Blue blood. Because at what point does it ever matter anymore? It doesn't
It's such
matter.
A loose, arbitrary definition.
The only true blue bloods, the only true ones, the ones that everybody say are just bona fide fact blue bloods that are making the playoffs consistently.
I mean, Alabama.
And you got to throw Ohio State in there, and you're going to have to throw Michigan in there for making back-to-back playoffs. But that's just the truth.
Yeah, I don't want to waste too much time going over it, because it is kind of stupid, the argument of trying to explain blue blood. So I don't want to go back and forth on that.
No, and you're right. Yeah. And it's not a topic for today to discuss when we have to discuss this, but that is just the biggest pet peeve of mine. Now, listen, they just hired a quarterbacks coach today, meaning Notre Dame. I forget the gentleman's name. Is Geno something?
Yeah, he's coming from Wisconsin. He was previously at Cincinnati, and they pulled him from the Wisconsin staff, which is goofy to me that they go outside to go and grab a quarterbacks coach but they're not going out.
Gerad is not a quarterback's coach. He's a wide receiver guy.
Yes.
Buddy, it's a very bad look. You know what? I will just tell you, it is a justification for people in Baton Rouge. Whether you like it or not, is a massive justification. Because, I mean, at what point do you sit here and I tweeted this out, and I think that you like the tweet. It's the difference between and everybody says that I'm crazy about this. It's the difference between what happens in the Southeast and what happens in the Midwest outside of Ohio State. They will spend money and they don't give two shits what you think about it because, Joe, they have the money. That is what the craziest thing. If Marcus Freeman wants to hire Andy Ludwig, do you think it's going to get worse than what you had last year? Joe, I don't mean this in a wrong way, but next year under Marcus Freeman is not going to be worse than you getting your ass beat by Marshall. Now, you know that I don't mean that in the wrong way. You got your ass beat by Marshall. It's not going to get much worse than what you had a season ago with the Rudy Poo quarterbacks that you had. You know what? Notre Dame might even have a better season now that you have a better quarterback if you would have gone and gotten Andy Ludwig. It makes no sense to me.
Well, here's the other thing, too. And them keeping Tommy Rees last year was a decision by the, kind of some meddling here by the administration again, because he was, one of their guys. And that's what's happening here with Gerad Parker, where they want to go with him instead of paying a buyout for an outside guy that's not one of their guys, which is total BS. It's ridiculous that we're hiring and we're moving forward with a guy who his last offensive coordinator gig was at West Virginia.
Oh,
and
God,
apparently he was demoted for Graham Harrell when he came in. And is Graham Harrell really that much of a genius offensive mind that you should be demoted for? I mean, West Virginia has been terrible.
No, but they were better offensively.
They were better offensively than when he was calling the plays.
Right. I mean, and so let's not act like, oh, Graham Harrell sucks. Well, if Graham Harrell sucks, then Gerad Parker really sucks.
Yeah, that's my point. Like, I don't know how you can look at this guy and go, I understand him being a candidate and having the conversation with him, but I don't know how you can look at this guy and think he's ready. He's more ready than Andy Ludwig. You know what? Let's go with him. He's a really promising guy. I have no evidence. I had evidence that Andy Ludwig was good, and that was the whole point. We just went from a guy who was really young, a really young offensive coordinator who is still getting acclimated to being that high level of a coach in Tommy Rees. Why would you take a step backward when we needed to bring in somebody with more experience? It's obnoxious.
Well, I think Ryan in the chat has a really good question. He says, is that another reason why Tommy left for Bama? You have to start asking those. Well,
I don't know about that. I think that's
listen, coaches know things. Coaches know things. And if they're not going to allow Marcus Freeman, if they're not going to allow him to be free, you know what? You know who Marcus Freeman is? He's just like a Disney movie character. It's like he's in the movie Aladdin. He's Robin Williams. He's the genie. He's got, remember, you got to make the little 3 wishes and the last one to make him free. I set you free and the handcuffs come off. That's what Marcus Freeman's got to do at Notre Dame for him to be have any kind of success. But I will tell you, it is interesting that Tommy Rees would leave for Alabama, and I get that it's Alabama, but would leave his stomping grounds, would leave his home to go somewhere else. And now look at the dysfunction that's going on at Notre Dame. It is kind of weird.
I think that those two things are unrelated, and it's what I talked about when Tommy Rees left, and I mentioned this on the show. A lot of people and a lot of Notre Dame fans and alumni, I think, were pushing for Tommy Rees to be out the door at the end of this season. A lot were kind of not surprised, but were like lukewarm on him coming back. It's like, really? He's coming back after the up and down season and the frustrations that we had offensively that were sticking with Tommy Rees. And you understand why he got more leeway was because of him being a former quarterback there, him being an alum of the program. I think that him deciding to leave for Alabama was because he knew that he was on the hot seat, and if things didn't work out next year, he would be out the door. You go to Alabama, you buy yourself a little bit more time, and you also get to work under a guy in Nick Saban who is going to be a little bit more controlling than Marcus Freeman. It's just a better situation because you're working with somebody who is the greatest coach in college football history compared to working with Marcus Freeman, who is new and still getting acclimated to everything going on. So I think that it's a little bit more of a different dynamic. I see it as that.
Well, let me tell you this, and this was the last note, and I do want to get to Gerad Parker before we move to
yeah.
It is consistent with Notre Dame to hire from within. Marcus Freeman was the DC.
Yeah.
Okay. Brian Kelly did a lot of hiring from within. A lot. Promoting guys. I mean, Tommy Rees is a pure example. Henry was a prime example. I mean, Henry was an analyst at times and then came up, looking through his Wikipedia. I mean, it is typical. It is very typical for them to hire from within. And you could just go down Brian Kelly's lineage at Notre Dame. The only guy that he would really brought back in, but it's bringing back in, so it's kind of hiring from within, was Mike Denbrock. So, yeah. I mean, you do see a pattern here that I don't think is good for Notre Dame. Here would be my ultimate question. Could you have gone and gotten Luke Fickell? Luke Fickell just left Cincinnati that was going to the Big 12 to Wisconsin. Do you really believe that if they would have pushed the envelope, I know that they were in the playoff, but Luke Fickell's team just beat Notre Dame the year that y'all hired Marcus Freeman. If they could, they did not have to hire Marcus Freeman from within. I'm glad he got the job. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a very talented coach. I don't mean it that way, but Luke Fickell obviously is a more experienced head coach than what Marcus Freeman is. Here would be my ultimate thing. And I literally, because I tweeted about Notre Dame, you know how the Twitter algorithm works, then I just see all these tweets like the Samson guy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Notre Dame media and people and fans that I see are talking specifically about, well, he's a good guy and the players will rally around him. That doesn't mean jack diddly shit when players will like him. That doesn't matter. Well, none of that matters when you're hiring, when you need to go to the next level. I am so sick and tired of this is not a Notre Dame rant. This is just a rant. The two biggest pet peeves outside of Blue Bloods that I have. Oh, well, the team will rally around him. Well, is he a good recruiter? Is he good X's and O's guy? Like, what does he benefit other than the kids really like him? Dude, I love Ed Orgeron. Loved him as a human being. He was a shitty coach at the end. It was like he got, he busted, what, and he got out. And I've lived it. I've been there. I've been through 6 and 6 seasons, having to fire up a podcast and tell everybody, hey guys, it's going to be okay. Joe, it's not going to be okay. You're going to have to ultimately give somebody roughly $15 million to not work for you anymore. I think the last thing for me with Notre Dame on this is grow up. Grow up. I see so many people talking about NIL too. Joe, they will never win anything of relevance until they start getting things in motion. You shouldn't have lost out on Peyton Bowen. You shouldn't have lost on the Keeley kid. You had him committed. All you really needed to do was go get some money. And let's not act like you don't have money. It is the biggest. Notre Dame could be a sleeping giant. Right now, they're still sleeping. It's like they took 75 sleeping pills and are not waking up.
Yeah, no, look, I don't disagree with you on some of those points that you made where I think this is really coming to full head where they don't want to, and I said it earlier, they don't want to spend the money to establish themselves as one of the best programs in the country. And there is such a long history of success at Notre Dame. There is such an appeal for the brand, and also the academic prestige is a big reason why you're able to attract some of the best recruits in the country. That was why Keon Keeley, when I spoke to him when I was covering Notre Dame for a little bit, I spoke to him. And that was why he chose Notre Dame. He was like, I want to go somewhere that I can learn and better myself as a human being.
And how did it pan out?
And it didn't pan out very well because they are unwilling to spend the money. They are unwilling to spend the money. And I don't even think though, Blake, it's like a principle thing. I think it's just the program's like, you know what, we don't really want to put the effort in for this to be any greater than it is.
You're
If
right.
we go to a bowl game and we win a bowl game, that's fine for us. You know, we're going to be independent. We're going to cash in on the rights deals that we have every single year. We're going to be happy with that. The brand being so big, and you stupid fans for tuning in, despite us being relatively slightly above average every single year and hoping for more. That's what they're banking on. They're never going to join a conference because it doesn't matter to them. If they win a bowl game, a decent bowl game every year, that's enough. They're content with the South Carolina win. That's what it means. That's what we're working towards, is a South Carolina win every single year in a bowl game. I don't think we're going to get past that unless there is a complete overhaul in the just general administration at Notre Dame.
Your fans got to get up in an uproar. You got to have big social media type of people.
No, I don't have the following for that.
Well, I mean, like guys that played there, like Bettis, and I see somebody said Golick. You got to go out there and legitimately make this a big issue.
Yeah.
The fact that Notre Dame alum and players aren't making this a big issue is why it's not going to – they're going to continue to get away with it.
I think they're all upset, but nobody's taking the action like you're saying, which is where it gets –
you got to take the action.
Yeah.
Joe, I mean, everybody I believe laughs at me besides Toss, Alex, our good friend over, because he's from the South. People laugh at me, and I get it. But it's like the NFL normally is a region. Like the NFL is just a very United States of America sport. Like any team in any location at any given moment can win. I mean, you got a team in Middle America running the NFL at the current moment. College football doesn't work that way, man. People are from all over the country, like Keeley or whoever. Alabama can go to Alaska and get the number one player in the country, and they're in the South. It's a big change. You got to have you have to have a culture change. All right, I do want to move to Gerad Parker though.
Okay.
All right. So as I said earlier, let me just say this. Dickie Lyons, who was a wide receiver at the University of Kentucky, a lot of LSU fans remember him when he blindsided Craig Stelz, knows Gerad really well. As a person, you can't, from what I understand, never met the man, you can't meet a better person. Okay, talk to a guy that's played with him, was a player under him. Can't get a better person or a better coach as a person. 2016, he was the interim coach, head coach at Purdue. Then in 2020 and 2021 was the West Virginia OC. Joe, they ranked 83rd in scoring in 2020. I'm going to actually let him slide on that one. Here's why: COVID. I'm going to give him a slide, okay. However, I would have given him a slide if in 2021 his quarterback didn't get worse and points per game didn't go down. Joe, they got worse. Now, that could be a Neil Brown issue. That could be a lot of issues. But everywhere he's gone, things have gotten worse offensively. Everywhere.
It's not promising. It's what I commented earlier on your one tweet when you tagged me. To hire a guy who was previously demoted from his job. And look, I'm not saying that people don't deserve second chances. That's not what I'm saying here. For this specific circumstance where you lost Tommy Rees, who, again, as I mentioned earlier, inexperienced, was relatively new, a couple years into being an offensive coordinator, had his own issues. The way that they were going to succeed and get back to a contending position is if they hired an experienced, reputable offensive coordinator from another Power 5 program. This is the complete opposite. This isn't even pulling a mid-tier guy from a smaller program. Like, this isn't that. They're getting a guy who was demoted and was on the coaching staff because they're being lazy. That's what this is.
You remember a couple weeks ago, we had the Bill O'Brien talk, and I said that you had a Bill O'Brien problem. I mean, Nick Saban, the disciplinary problem. You didn't have a Bill O'Brien problem. I don't know. I see people saying that Notre Dame doesn't have an athlete issue. You do have an athlete issue, okay? Bill O'Brien, with all due respect, scored more points per game at Alabama with far less and worse receivers than he did the year before, and a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. I don't want to go back into the Bill O'Brien thing, but my analogy is, to your point, to agree with you, and I fully 1,000% agree with you. Sometimes you need a coach that knows that, hey, man, the way that this game is going, we might need to run the ball on 3rd and 4 and punt and regroup on the sidelines because these guys haven't seen this before. I'll never forget, Joe, that we're playing Stephen F. Austin in Texas, and we ran the ball on 3rd and 7. We're down by 10. And I'm like, what in the F are we doing? Well, it was my fault. We had not seen this type of stunt. We had not seen this type of coverage before. We regrouped, score 17 points unanswered. We win the football game. Southeastern goes on and win I'm out at that point, but Southeastern goes on to win the Southland Conference. You need experience, and you're not getting it here. I think, Joe, and you're going to highly disagree with me here, you do have a talent issue on the outside. You do not have the perimeter weapons to where if you just call a stick route, a guy can make the catch and go 80. You don't. You can say you have the receivers. You can, Joe, name the last time that you guys had, that Notre Dame had a receiver that is Jamison Williams, Odell.
Will Fuller, who's a first-round pick. Will Fuller was really freaking good.
You know what? I will actually give you that one. And you know what? I'll actually give you Chase Claypool. Fair?
He was a little overrated.
Hey, by the way, you know who the offensive coordinator was for both of those guys?
Not Mike Denbrock.
Actually, it was.
Yeah, exactly. I know it was.
Okay. My point is,
I don't think that they do have. Look, this past year they absolutely did. They absolutely did this past year have an athlete problem, but they actually this recruiting class going into next year, the 2023 recruiting class, was probably one of the most athletic groups that they had. There's a number of receivers and running backs that are good explosive athletes. So that's where
those guys make significant contributions while Marcus Freeman is the head coach. Well, those guys make significant contributions.
They might not.
While Gerad Parker is the OC. Joe, I'm talking about now. We're talking about I'm talking about right now. Like, do you have a guy right now that you know for an absolute fact when you go, who does Notre Dame play early in the season? I think they have a pretty tough opponent. Don't they play
Ohio State to start the season?
Do you have a guy right now that can go on a quick slant and take it 80?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. And we also don't have Michael Mayer anymore, which is very troubling.
So that's my point. Not only are you hindering your head coach when it comes to the offensive coordinator, you're hindering him into a point where, hey, man, you're not giving him money for NIL either.
Look, the lack of see, this is my further my point that I was talking about earlier, why they needed to get somebody with experience at another Power 5 program, and why Ludwig was so perfect is that because when he was at Utah, they didn't have explosive, crazy, freaky athletes.
You're right.
They didn't. They had a bunch of 3-star recruits with some traits, and he found ways to scheme them the football. He found ways to run the ball effectively.
White dudes, wide ass open, Mormons.
He turned Cam Rising into a superstar. He made him look way better than he actually is, and he would have been so perfect, Blake. He would have been so perfect, and Gerad Parker is not going to move the needle. They're going to be average. They're going to be worse than they were last year. There is no shot in hell that things improve with Gerad Parker as the offensive coordinator. And the other thing too is, I can maybe sit here and make the argument if Marcus Freeman was an offensive coach, if he came from a background as being an offensive coordinator, I can maybe make the argument, well, some of that's going to translate over, some of that decision making, some of that coaching prowess, the scheme is going to translate over, but he's not. And last year he had no control over what Tommy Rees was doing. So now we've got a guy who's not a good offensive coordinator, has a proven past of not being a good play caller, taking over, and nobody to step in on him. It's going to be disastrous. It's going to be disastrous.
It's a big issue. It's a big issue when you won't let your head coach coach. I guarantee you, what's your AD's name again?
Jack Swarbrick.
Swarbrick. Does he know what a cover 3 is?
Probably
because
not.
if he doesn't, then he doesn't need to tell Marcus Freeman, Jack Diddley about anything football related.
I want to look up his background.
Well,
I forget where he came from.
You better pray to God that he played football, because if he didn't, what's he mailing with Marcus Freeman for? You know what's interesting is Marcus Freeman's going to wind up getting fed up with this, and he's going to leave, and he's going to be a great DC somewhere. He might be the next DC at Bama. Whoever really knows. There's so many different places he could go and have more freedom, than anybody else. The troll sniper on here on YouTube says he's a lawyer.
Yeah, he has a lawyer background. He's a Notre Dame alum. That's the extent of it.
You know what's interesting? Chris H says this on YouTube. I just saw Kevin Sumlin is officially back in college football, and he's Maryland's tight end coach.
Yeah,
he's someone. I mean,
so random.
You could have hired Kevin Sumlin, and he would have been a better fit. Really and truthfully, he would have been a better fit than what you got right now, Gerad Parker. Dude, they averaged 37.4 passing attempts per game in 2020. 37.5 passing attempts. Their quarterback only had 14 total touchdowns.
And who the hell was even their quarterback? I don't even know who
Jarrett Doge.
Oh, Dagey. Jarrett Dagey. Whatever. Oh, he stinks. You know where he was this past year?
No.
Troy. And he wasn't even the starting quarterback, I'm pretty sure. I might be mixing that up. Wait.
You can't be just researching stuff. You got to know this stuff.
I do know this stuff, but I want to confirm. That's
okay.
That's all that matters.
Well, either way,
he was at Troy and he got beat out, so he wasn't even the starting quarterback. That's how pathetic this is.
Well, so I am going to push back in a good favor of Notre Dame for you. You ready? I'm going to give you some hope.
All right.
You do got Sam Hartman.
Oh man, he better be the second coming of Christ if they want to win some football games, man.
You're talking about Notre Dame. I mean, saying this is the second coming of Christ, he's gonna have to for them to win 10 games. In my opinion, he's gonna have a meteoric rise. He's gonna have. You know what you could, Joe? There are so many good offensive coordinators that Notre Dame could have gone after, that this just makes it look so bad that they're doing this. Why don't you go and ask a guy from Wake Forest if he wants to come and take Sam Hartman and they'd run it back? There's just so many dudes.
There's plenty of options.
You know who else? And probably would have taken a pay cut, and you're going to hate me saying this, and I brought it up 2 weeks ago, and I brought it up last week, and I'm bringing it up again. You could have called Dan Mullen. He doesn't even have a buyout.
That one's the most, and he also, I don't know if he's still getting paid by Florida. I don't know where that sits.
Well, regardless, they owed him like 15 to 20 milli. Bro, think about this. Dan Mullen is living such a cush life because he's probably getting paid $5 million a year from ESPN. He's probably got a $20 million buyout, and you're saying you probably could have got the man for $1 million a year. A year.
Blake, you're stressing me out. You're stressing me out. That even all these names. It's so stupid. It's so unbelievably stupid. It's like the last guy on the list that you go with. It's lazy. It's almost like they didn't want to spend the time interviewing people, that they just went with Gerad Parker. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of it. And you know what? When I watch 9-4, 10-3 next year, because they have a cupcake second half of the schedule and they lose to Clemson, USC, Ohio State, and someone else stupid, I'm just going to be banging my head against the wall and banging my head against the wall like I do every single year, Blake.
Well, look, you start off against Ohio State, as we just mentioned. Let me see. No, actually, y'all go to Dublin, right?
Yeah, we. My dad and my brother are going to that game in Dublin.
Oh, really?
They play Navy. Yeah.
You don't start off with Ohio State. You got them.
No, week 0 game. Yeah.
September. So you start off with Navy in Dublin. I think you can get a win there. Then you got Tennessee State, maybe a win there.
Stop it.
Buddy, I mean, the way that y'all played against FCS and
they've never played in FCS. This is the first time. It's the first FCS matchup that
they had to. They got to get a win. They got to get a win somewhere.
Yeah.
NC State, Central Michigan, So look, you could potentially go 1, 2, 3, 4. You could start the season 4-0.
Yeah, there's an easy slate of games to start the season, but then they've got Ohio State coming to them, which is not a game that they're going to win. They have USC coming to them, not a game that they're going to win, and then they also travel to Clemson, which is again a game that they're not going to win.
Chris H says that Mullen likes the broadcast booth. You know who else likes the broadcast booth? Nobody when you're getting paid that much money. You know what's even, you know, you know what I'm going to tell you? You know what I'm going to tell you? You could have even, did you see this article today and Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport reporting that Carolina, the Colts, the Eagles, all reached out to Dan Orlovsky to be the next OC of their teams.
That one's ridiculous. That one's so stupid.
But here's the crazy thing though. Would Dan Orlovsky not be better than Gerad Parker?
No, I push back on that one. I don't think so because he's never coached a game in his life. At least Gerad Parker's been a coach before. Dan Orlovsky might be smart, but it doesn't mean he knows how to coach.
Well, what's so crazy about all this is that they were like blowing off, and we got to get because we only got like 6 minutes, 7 minutes. All this Joe Brady smoke, right? Like, brother, Joe Brady's got like a $7 million buyout.
Well, that's the more effed up part is that was one of the first names brought up was Joe Brady.
I know, and that
wasn't even in the stratosphere.
I think he's got a 3-year, like $9 million contract.
Even if he was interested in coming back to college football,
he wouldn't go to Notre Dame.
No.
He would have.
Notre Dame wouldn't have taken him. Notre Dame wouldn't have freaking taken him.
That's true.
Stinks.
Well, you know how good programs are run, though. Like Georgia. Georgia made, and you know what's so bad transitioning here?
Yeah.
Georgia literally makes Notre Dame look so bad because they literally lost their offensive coordinator in a day, and then within an hour, within 45 minutes, they hired their offensive coordinator in Mike Bobo.
So that's the hilarity of it is that you've got Notre Dame who's slopping around, and they're just like, you know, it's like you're at recess and you're trying to pick a team for kickball, and it's like, hey, what about that guy? Can he play? Can he play kickball? But meanwhile, you got Georgia who's got analysts on their staff who some of us don't even know that they're on the staff because we don't pay that close attention to the analysts. And they're like, oh, Monken's leaving? What about Bobo? He's an offensive coordinator who's just kind of hanging around being an analyst. Why doesn't he be our offensive coordinator? They've got so many elite guys that they can just pull from. Now, we're going to dive into if this makes sense or not, but it's just, it's hilarious.
Makes sense. Kick it off. Let's talk about it.
So we talked about earlier of Mike Bobo's history, and I think from his early history as a coach, I think it's a perfect fit. Former quarterback at Georgia, he was the offensive coordinator for Matthew. Played with Kirby, his former offensive coordinator for Matthew Stafford and Aaron Murray, amongst some very talented offensive players. That's a really positive step. But the only thing that's a little tough for me is that his career since that point when he took over at Colorado State and he had stops at South Carolina, he had stops at Auburn, has been a little bit gradually downhill. Things have not been very good. He had a very rough time at Colorado State, which is not a good program. It's not a team that you're going to get a lot of resources to win. And then in addition to that, he took over and was kind of a scapegoat at Auburn in Brian Harsin's first year. Brian Harsin needed to blame somebody, so he fired Mike Bobo. But that offensive play calling was disastrously terrible. It did not fit with Bo Nix. I think what you mentioned earlier in the show, Blake, is that when you've got really good talent, your job's a lot easier. And I think he was in a lot of situations where he was trying to Band-Aid, and he's not a Garrett Riley. You know, he's not a guy who's going to scheme up some crazy stuff, or an Andy Ludwig that's going to scheme up some crazy stuff with some lesser athletes. Right. He's a guy, when he's got the athletes, he's going to do a fantastic job, which is why I don't think this is going to be much of a step down at all.
Georgia returns 4 of their 5 offensive linemen, a 5th that rotated in and out.
Yes.
Joe, every offensive coordinator looks like a genius when you can get 5 yards per carry. Like they returned Cedric Van Pran. they look like geniuses when you can call 32, 33, 34, 37 dive or outside zone and get 5 yards consistently. I think that Mike Bobo, I think Kirby trusts him. I think that Auburn was more of a Brian Harsin issue with Bobo. Look, he wasn't a good head coach. Neither was Todd Monken. Sometimes guys just aren't good head coaches. I really do think that, there's a system in play here at Georgia. He's going to run a lot of the same stuff. And quite honestly, maybe some verbiage changes. Like I talked to a GA at Georgia today. He's like, but they're going to change some verbiages. They're going to put in some other things that Mike Bobo likes. But other than that, the show keeps going on. Like he's going to call a lot of the same stuff because why would you completely change a playbook? You can call the same plays and the same formations and do a lot of the same stuff, and the coach just changed his verbiage.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say it's a good hire because I think Georgia, like everybody's going to say, oh, look, Georgia's human, right? Like people will say that next year, even though it's so stupid. They will say, oh, look, Georgia's human. They just went back-to-back natties. The chances of them winning another one next year aren't that high. We haven't seen it before. Literally, we have not seen it before. I think it's a good thing. I don't mind Mike Bobo. I think from talking to people at Georgia, like I did today, I think that they believe that their defense is just going to be just as good as what they've been producing. With that being said, buddy, sometimes you can just run the football and play good defense and play ball control because their schedule is not that strong, and I'll be the first to admit they don't have a strong one. But when you go up against a team like Tennessee, this is the ultimate test for me for Georgia next season. For Mike Bobo, can you outdo Tennessee? If you can outdo Tennessee, then you'll be fine. If you can't, then you're going to be in trouble. You do have tough opponents you might have to score with, like an Auburn. Let's see what Hugh Freeze can do. And that's a guy, Joe, as we talk about the SEC, that we have not talked about.
Right.
And nobody's talking about him, and it's exactly what Hugh Freeze wants. Is nobody talking about him. I think it's an okay hire. I don't think it's a great one. I don't think it's a bad one. I think Mike Bobo, let me just say this. If Notre Dame, and talking about both these teams, if Notre Dame hired Mike Bobo, just hear me out.
Yeah.
If they would have hired Mike Bobo, he would have been a better offensive coordinator than both of the guys that they had, Reeves or now Gerad Parker. He just is.
Yeah.
He's got, and so what's crazy is that you can make a subpar hire at Georgia and it'd be better than what Notre Dame's doing.
Right. To not backtrack on Notre Dame, I totally agree.
No, we're not. I was just putting
but I totally agree with the conversation here. And one of the ways that I kind of put it is it's a nothing hire. And I know that saying that seems like it's got a negative connotation, but you don't want to bring in somebody that's going to completely shake things up. You want somebody that you're just going to be able to step and continue with what was going on. So I think you lose Monken. He's a great offensive coordinator, and he's going to the Baltimore Ravens. And now we've got a guy who's not going to change too much. And we all know, here's the key thing. The bread and butter for Georgia is not offense. This isn't an offensive-minded team. They've been really good.
I got to push back on you, but continue.
They've been really good offensively, but my point is that Will Muschamp is such a great defensive coordinator, and they've recruited so well defensively that the primary focus here is how well do they show up on defense? And the defense is going to win you football games on the days that maybe Bobo doesn't call a good game plan. In the instances where maybe Georgia fans are frustrated with the offensive output, and you're going to make a transition to a new quarterback. I know that, and I wrote down that Monken was in the top 10 in the past couple of years when he was calling plays before 2020. They're losing that, obviously. But This has always been a defensive-minded team. All their best athletes are on defense. They're not losing anything there, so there's nothing to be concerned about if you're a Georgia fan.
As we close this out, and they're getting better, and they're bringing in guys at the wide receiver position from the portal.
Absolutely.
Look, Brock Bowers is still alive. He still has a pulse.
Just get him the ball.
They're still recruiting at an extremely, extremely high level. And I will tell you, as we sit here on February 15th, the day of our Lord in the year 2023 of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, They're going to be the best offensive line in the SEC. It's not.
Yeah.
I think LSU and Georgia will have the both best offensive lines in the SEC. They return too much. Their running games are too prolific. For that being said alone, Joe, when you can get 5 yards per carry, and people are amazed by, he threw a forward pass. Sounds good. If you can get in the trenches and get dirty and run the football, they'll be fine. And I think that the worst thing that they will have next season is having 2 losses. It's the worst thing that they have. They're not going to lose more than two games.
Their schedule's too soft, for them to.
The biggest games that they have are Auburn, South Carolina, and Tennessee.
Tennessee's going to be the real ultimate test. And hypothetically, they lose that game. The other option for a loss
is the playoff.
Yeah, they can be in the
playoff. Be in the playoff, man. And that's what the crazy thing about all this is. And it all starts with the recruiting. All right, Joseph.
Great show.
Well, it was, and it was. I just hate. Look, I do hate seeing this for Notre Dame. Like I really do. I'm not being facetious.
No, I know. And
you know what? I'm going to leave you on this, and it's going to make you feel really bad. Are you ready?
You better be careful here.
Chris H says, I still can't believe Notre Dame isn't giving he says Brian, but Byron Leftwich a serious look.
Byron Leftwich was not actually interested. Byron Leftwich was not actually interested in the job. That was misreported on.
I know that you were born in the 2000s, okay? Or no, you were born in 1998, I would assume.
Yeah, 1998. That is correct.
Okay. Let me just tell you something. As someone who's lived 12 more years than you, money talks and bullshit walks.
Let me afterwards. I'm gonna tell you. I forget if I gave you the context of this, but that story was misinformation. The Byron Leftwich thing. Okay. That was why I'm saying that. I'm not just saying like, he wasn't interested. He would have hired. He legitimately was.
Wait, so
was not
somebody
interested.
at Notre Dame publicized false information? No,
it's not anybody that I know. It's not anybody that I know. I'm establishing that right now.
Okay. Sure.
No, completely different website. All I'm saying though that it seems like that story was not, from my understanding, that
accurate.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good show, buddy. We won't be live tomorrow. I can't do back to back. Maybe really Saturday.
We will discuss.
Okay. Oh, we got to discuss now.
Well, I thought we were going tomorrow, and
I can't go tomorrow.
Saturday, I'm going to the Genesis Invitational. So we can go early in the morning. We can figure it out.
Later, dudes.